In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, it is the second installment of the eye test versus the numbers, and the prospect that I will be covering today is one of the more polarizing prospects, if not the most polarizing prospect in the 2025 NBA draft, and it is Ace Bailey. So let's find out what my eyes tell me and if it matches up to what the numbers are saying. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I am your host, Rafael Barlowe. And in this episode is going to be about the eye test versus the numbers. I'm going to share my thoughts on Ace Bailey as a prospect in the first segment. And then in the second segment, we're going to cover the analytics. What are the analytics saying? We'll see if it matches up. And then wrapping up the episode in the last segment, I'm going to share my thoughts on what I believe Ace Bailey needs to work on in the pre-draft process. But before we get too deep into this episode, I got to tell you about the Locked On newsletter. Your favorite NBA team has a newsletter, so check it out at lockedondaily.com. So whatever team you support, whether it is the Lakers, the Knicks, the Wolves, the Heat, the Bulls, check it out at lockedondaily.com. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are your daily source for NBA draft content. All right, let's get right into this episode because I've watched the tape, I've built the scouting reports, and it is now time to test what I think against the numbers. This is Behind the Numbers, where I will put the eye test on trial and let the analytics do the cross-examining. And like I mentioned, the prospect that I will be covering is none other than Ace Bailey. I have Ace Bailey as the number 3 prospect on my big board, which will soon to be updated and soon to be released. Ace Bailey is a 6'10 wing freshman from Rutgers, one of the most highly touted freshmen coming into this basketball season. What I love about Ace Bailey is just the physical tools. And he had a pretty good freshman year statistically. Now, overall, team-wise, Rutgers did not live up to the expectations, but Bailey averaged 17.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.3 blocks, and 1 steal per game. He shot 46% from the floor, 34% from 3, and 69% from the foul line. All right, so let's just get into my personal scouting report from watching a lot of Ace Bailey film dating back to high school to this season. And with Ace, the thing that stands out to me, one, is the positional size. He is a 6'10 wing, and he is a gifted shot maker. He is capable of some dynamic shooting performances. This is where it gets a little interesting. He's a good ball handler for 6'10", but I'm going to talk about the ball handling as a area for improvement. But when you just look at like the size and the ball handling, I will say that he is a good ball handler at 6'10". He's a good athlete. He is what I call a stop and pop scorer. He has the ability to stop on a dime, pull up, and elevate over the top of smaller defenders. And I just love his ability to rise and fire. Not a lot of guys can rise and fire or stop and pop like Ace Bailey. When it comes to finishing around the rim, he does have soft touch finish floaters. And I think that is very important, especially with his thin frame. He's a good shooter off the catch, has a quick trigger. He can shoot on the move. You can run him off action plays and pin downs. He is a very good transition finisher when he chooses to be. And I think that he has real upside as a mid-post and low-post scorer. He's going to have to get stronger, which is something that you can pretty much say on every prospect scouting report. But I think once he gets stronger and with his ability to shoot over the top of smaller defenders, I think that Ace Bailey is going to be a really good mid-post and low-post scorer on the next level. In my opinion, I think Ace Bailey has all the tools to be a successful 3-level scorer in the NBA. He can shoot the 3, he can shoot the mid-range, he has the size and athleticism to be a good finisher around the rim. The upside is probably like the most alluring feature for Ace Bailey. I mean, you love the, like I said, the size, the length, the positional size, the upside as a shooter. Defensively, I think that he can be a good weak side shot blocker, has the tools to be able to switch and defend down in space. And he's a good rebounder. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he does on the glass, average 7 rebounds per game, like I said. So I think that Ace Bailey has the tools and the physical attributes to be a two-way presence that can defend multiple positions, knock down open shots, and I think that he could be a go-to scorer in the NBA. Again, the tools are there, and I know I keep using the word tools, but the tools and potential, and that's one of the things you're always going to hear about Ace Bailey is the upside and what he can be as opposed to what he is now. As far as weaknesses and areas of concern, the most glaring area of concern for me is that he's a ball stopper. Once the ball touches his hands, the ball is not moving. The shot is normally going up, has a tendency to stall the offense, not a lot of movement. And I think that for him to maximize his potential as a scorer, he's going to have to be a better passer, because becoming a better passer will basically not allow defenses to really key on him. And so I think for him, being a ball stopper and passing, kind of if you put them all together, I think that is the most glaring weakness. And then there's the shot selection. This has been an issue since high school. With his talent and his skill level, he does not get a lot of easy shots, he just settles for really difficult shots. He has a heavy diet of tough contested shots. Now, he can make these shots. Now, he's one of the best tough shot makers in this draft class, but he shoots too many tough shots, in my opinion. He's very streaky. He is capable of some absolute lights out shooting performances. He had a game against Indiana, Penn State. He's the type of guy that can go 15 for 21 and score 30 points and not get to the free throw line. He's also the type of guy that can go 5 for 22. So he is very streaky. Also feel like he can be very predictable as a scorer. I know one of the words that people talk about all the time now is bag. Like sometimes it seems like he has a bag, but sometimes it doesn't, because I think he's very predictable. I think there are times when he has the ball, you know that he's going to face up, maybe jab, shoot the pull-up jumper, or you know there's going to be a one dribble pull-up. I would like to see him not be so predictable on offense. Now, as far as the handle, he can dribble. For 6'10", he can dribble, but I think that he needs to improve his handle and also his strength, but improve his handle, which will allow him to be able to get to his spots easy. There are so many times where, and this goes back to him being predictable, there's so many times where he just seems like he doesn't have a counter and he's predictable. And he is able to bail himself out of tough situations because he can stop, pop, rise and fire and shoot over the top of smaller defenders, has a high release. And so he's able to get the shot off cleanly. And I do think that bails him out a lot of times because he's just very predictable in my opinion. But I do think that he needs to improve the handle, take better angles getting to the rim. And I think once he's able to improve his handle, take better angles at getting to the rim, that's when he will be a 3-level scorer. But again, I'm going to go back to the passing. Ace Bailey does not pass the ball. He only had 38 assists this year, and that is compared to 61 turnovers. He is the epitome of a guy that gets tunnel vision. Now, I will say I have seen him make some reads that give me hope that, okay, maybe he can be a better passer. Maybe he does actually have some vision, but those instances are too few and far between. So I think that for Ace Bailey, becoming a better passer, reading defenses, I think that's going to be key for him. All right, so that is my personal scouting report. So now let's see what the analytics and the numbers are saying. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be very expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. And that is where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, which can save you time and money. And therapy isn't just for the toughest moments in life, it can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, or developing positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it can make a huge, huge difference. And your well being is worth it. So visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, segment 2. Let's get into the play types. 18% of Ace Bailey's possessions as a freshman this year were in isolation. And usually for a guy that is labeled as a gifted shot maker, a guy that is a bucket getter, a professional scorer, all of those labels, you think isolation is the area where they are the strongest. And with Ace, the numbers did not match up with what I saw as far as being an isolation score. He only shot 33% in isolation. And then his second most frequent play types were spot ups, which is to no surprise. Now, 52% of his spot up possessions were no dribble jumpers. Sometimes those were catch and shoot jumpers, which is totally fine. Other times it was a spot up. He caught the ball, maybe jab stepped, kind of basically was a ball stopper and ended up settling for a contested pull up jumper. And then 14% of his possessions were in transition. And so in transition, he shot 35% on transition threes. And if you listen to the last episode where I did the eye test versus the numbers, I talked about his teammate Dylan Harper. Maybe I'm old school here, but I am not a big fan of transition threes unless you are spotting up in the corner and you have a rim runner that is running down the lane, and then the defense gets sucked in by the rim runner and you're open in the corner. But guys pulling up for threes in transition, I absolutely hate it. I know that's the new NBA, and I am totally fine with the new NBA. I'm not one of these guys that bashes the game where it's going, but if there's one play that just kind of, I guess, grinds my gears, it is transition threes. And Ace shot 35% on transition threes, which is, I guess that's not bad. But he shot 60% on transition twos. I feel like Ace is a really good transition finisher when he wants to be, but I think he settles for too many threes in transition. The next play type is coming off screens, and 10% of Ace Bailey's possessions were coming off screens. And this is where he's very good. He shot 46% coming off screens, which puts him in the top 66 percentile in college basketball. He has the ability to score off pin downs. If you watch his film, there are plays where he can shoot on the move where it looks like he's fading out of bounds, and he still has the strength and the release to be able to make those tough, contested, fading out of bounds threes. So I think Ace Bailey, with his size at 6'10", is going to be a good movement shooter, and the numbers here support that. All right, let's just talk about the jump shot, overall jump shot. He shot 37% on jumpers, which I think that is very, very promising. But he shot 43% on catch and shoot jumpers. So I think that the numbers in the eye test match up there, that Ace Bailey is an efficient shooter off the catch. When you dig a little bit deeper into the numbers, you see he shot 38% on catch and shoot threes. I think that is a number you'll take, but this is where it gets really interesting. He shot 44% on guarded or contested catch and shoot threes. That is absolutely phenomenal. 44% with a hand in his face. I think that has to do with the high release and his ability to stop, pop, rise, and fire over shorter defenders. But this is where it gets really, really weird. He only shot 25% when left open from three. Most people are the opposite. Ace Bailey appears to need a hand in his face from three off the catch to make it go in. He is, there's a big contrast here. We're talking about dead eye shooter on guarded catch and shoot threes to an inefficient when he's left wide open. So that is a number that I think he needs to, well, he can improve. Of course, he needs to improve it. But if he can improve that, then we're talking about a guy that could be a 40% shooter in the NBA. Now, Ace does take I wouldn't say a lot, but he took 41 threes off the dribble this year, and he shot 24% on three-pointers off the dribble. Now let's get into the paint area. One of the things I like about Ace is that he has soft touch finishes. Not necessarily always floaters, but he does have these shots in the paint, whether it's a push shot, a jab, mini floater. He does have soft touch finishes in the paint, which is good for a guy with his frame. It can prevent him from, just the contact that he would have to face at the rim in a crowded paint. But he shot 60% on floaters. And then at the rim, he shot 63% at the rim, but only 50% on layups. But he had 27 dunks. And so I do look at guys that can finish in the paint. And to me, that's very, very key, because the most efficient zones on the basketball court in the NBA are in the paint and from deep. So 63% at the rim is good. 50% on layups, I think that number really needs to improve. So when you dig even more deeper into the stats and take away like the percentages at the rim and transition, you see Ace only shot 56% at the rim. That is a little concerning, and 42% on layups. So he missed nearly 60% of his layups. And so I think that part of that is, again, the bad angles. Part of that is he needs to get stronger. Sometimes he's bumped off of his spots and he's not able to finish through contact. And 15 of his 27 dunks were in the half court, which is fair. I like that. But Ace needs to become a better finisher at the rim. And I believe that, again, better handle, taking better angles, and getting stronger. All right, last segment. I'm going to dig into some areas of improvement, what I think Ace Bailey needs to work on in this pre-draft process and going forward to maximize his potential as an NBA player or star. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions, and the privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get a 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average, and the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing is risky. Rates are subject to change, and the 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from your first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on the data from the FDIC. As of November 18th, 2024, Robinhood Financial LLC is a member of the SIPC, and Gold memberships is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. All right, last segment. So coming into the season, I thought that Ace Bailey had a legitimate shot of being the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft. I thought Cooper Flagg was the favorite, but I thought Ace was a strong candidate. As of right now, I think that he goes number 3, but he's more than likely to go number 5 than to go number 1. Cooper Flagg has it sold up as the number 1 pick. I think Dylan Harper is a lock at number 2. I still think Ace is the favorite to be the 3rd pick, but you never know. A team may like VJ Edgecombe or Trey Johnson. You just never know. I've even heard some teams, depending on the team, could like Jeremiah Fears as high as number 3. One of the things I will say about Ace Bailey, I found it pretty interesting, is that Ace is very divisive and polarizing. There are people that just absolutely hate his shot selection. They hate the fact that he's very streaky, that he's not an efficient finisher around the rim, that his handle is a little bit loose from time to time, and they feel like a guy like VJ Edgecombe is safer. Some feel like Common Mollywouch is even safer. But one of the things I've noticed is that the people that really rock with Ace Bailey really, really like him. But one of the things I've paid attention to is that the same people that are really, really high on Ace Bailey, a lot of them were very, very high on Imani Bates. Not saying that they are the same player, but the archetype of these big wings that can shoot, that can create their own shot, that can handle. I mean, there are some similarities there. Now, we know like the backstory with Imani Bates, but I know there are some people that feel like he hasn't been given a fair shot in the G League. But I will say this: a lot of the people that I know that really, really, rock with Ace Bailey are the same people that really, really liked Imani Bates. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. What is the biggest difference between Imani Bates and Ace Bailey? Let me know. But let's get into areas for improvement that I think that he really needs to work on this offseason. Number one, get stronger. Like I mentioned, getting to the rim, I think some of his inefficiencies at the rim are due to lack of strength. Now, Ace is young. Ace is one of the younger players in this class, is 18. I mean, there are guys that are 18 that are probably like juniors in high school. So Ace is young. I will say this: Ace is competitive. I like the fact that he is competitive. He does play with some competitive fire, and he is not a guy that you just question if he's engaged. So I will say that much. But I think he needs to get stronger. I think he needs to improve his handle, just tighten it up a little bit, and be better at getting to his spots. Maybe add a little bit more offensive creativity, which is weird because he is a creative scorer. Some of the shots he makes, whether it's just like reverse pivots, he does have some creativity in his offensive arsenal, but I feel like he is creative and predictable at the same time. And that's a very, very weird combination. But like I mentioned earlier, whenever he gets stuck, he has the luxury of rising over the top and shooting over smaller defenders. But I would like to see him attack the rim a little bit more, maybe add a little bit, maybe add more counters to his game. I think that passing is going to be key. Now I know you can't just go in the gym and just work on your passing. Maybe you can as far as like the accuracy and the timing, but I think he needs to study a lot of film. Some people want to say that maybe he could be like Kevin Durant. And I think any player that is 6'9", 6'10" with some wing skills is going to draw some Kevin Durant comparisons. But I think Ace really needs to study how Durant has developed as a passer over the years. Durant wasn't like a really good passer his freshman year at Texas, but Durant has improved as a passer. So I think Ace needs to study how Durant reads defenses, how Durant knows how to use his size and his shooting and his gravity to create open shots for other teammates. I mean, Kevin Durant, I think he's averaging like 4 assists per game this year at like 36 or 37. So I think Ace needs to study Kevin Durant as far as just being able to become a better passer. And then the shot selection, I think some of that has to do with, one, watching film, two, some of it can go back to being stronger and the predictability, but he needs to improve his shot selection because there are times where he takes some shots that you're just like, I know you could have got an easier shot than that. So improving his shot selection will be key. But overall, I am a believer in Ace Bailey. The thing that really scares me about not only this draft, but draft classes in general, and I did some research last year, and I can probably go back and pull up the numbers. Maybe it's 2 years ago. When I look at past draft classes, of the top 3 picks, there's only been maybe 1 or 2 drafts where the top 3 picks ended up being all-stars. 2016 comes to mind. Ben Simmons was an all-star. Brandon Ingram was an all-star. And Jaylen Brown has, been a multi-time all-star and an NBA champion. He's making like $300 million. The 2019 class had 2 all-stars, and Zion Williamson and Ja Morant. RJ Barrett was the 3rd pick. And if I had to put my money down and say which of my top 3 prospects in this draft, which one is the least likely to become an all-star, I think it would be Ace Bailey. I mean, you go back and look at past draft classes. How many of the top 3 picks ended up being all-stars? But Ace, in my opinion, if he reaches all of his benchmarks, if he puts everything together, could end up being, you're going to think I'm crazy, but could end up being the best player in this class. I don't think that's far-fetched. I really don't. But I think for him, there's such a variance. Ace could end up being a poor man's Kevin Durant, or he could end up being Rashard Lewis, which is nothing wrong with being Rashard Lewis or Michael Porter Jr. or whatever 6'10" spot-up shooter that has a little bit of game off the bounce. But I just think it's such a wide variance for Ace Bailey. However, I still think that he is a top 3 pick in this NBA draft. I love the potential. I love the upside. And everything that I saw with my eyes pretty much matches up with what the numbers are telling me. All right, well, that wraps up this episode of the Eye Test versus the Numbers on Ace Bailey. Stay tuned in the next episode where I'm going to cover Cooper Flagg. Let's see if what my eyes are telling me, what the numbers are saying, let's see if it's all on the same page. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. I am out of here.